So I'd like to say welcome to the final session. We would like to get started. We're running a little bit late, but we want to catch up, so we're sure to make it to dinner on time. Certain you'll all agree with that. I think it's been a fantastic conference based on all the vibrant discussions that we've had, the great presentations that we've had, and just the fact that there's still so many of you here talking and excited to be at the final session. So I'd just like to say a couple thank yous. I want to say thank you again to our local organizers in Hanoi. Of course, none of this would have happened without them. Viet On, the Institute of Environmental Science and Engineering, and also our Vietnamese hosts, especially the Ministry of Construction, including the Administration of Technical Infrastructure and the International Cooperation Department and the Vietnam Water Supply and Sewerage Association. Aside from that, I just want to say thank you to everyone else. I'm not going to take the time to mention anyone else specifically, but a conference of this scale is an enormous undertaking. It's impossible to acknowledge everyone, but without all of us, every single one of us that's in this room right now, everyone working behind the scenes, all of us working collectively, volunteering, and attending to make it possible. So I'd just like to say thank you to everybody. So that we have sort of a theme for our final session, and it's basically focusing on positive outcomes of the conference and how we can take this growing exponential growth and momentum forward and do good, sustainable things with it in the future. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who's gonna, Brian Arbogast, who's gonna talk about solutions, ideas, tools, and innovations from FSM3. I'm certain here everybody now knows Brian, but in case you don't, Brian is the director of the Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene team at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So, Brian.
Thanks so much, Linda, and welcome and good afternoon, everyone. You know, when you get asked to do a presentation at 4 o'clock on the third day of a very dense conference like this, it's not something you necessarily look forward to. But the amount of energy in the room and out there and the conversations that are happening, I find truly remarkable and inspiring. And in fact, one of the themes of my talk, and I think probably of the panel that follows, is the fact that a huge part of the value of this convening, of this conference, are all of those conversations. It's so easy, we're all in our own silos. We focus on different things over the course of a normal week, but it's the conversations that we have together, and it's the linkages that we make between the things that we do that I think has the tremendous opportunity to be transformative. And so, in fact, that's my talk, and if my slides could come up, that would be helpful. What I'm going to talk about today is a little bit about transformation, and what does it really take to drive transformation in the sanitation space. Now, those of you that work in the United States, if you'd been home on Monday, it would have been Martin Luther King Day. And Martin Luther King, of course, is a very famous American who is known for a very famous speech where he said, "I have a dream." And it was incredible. And so when I ran this past one of my teammates, and they said, "You know, Brian, is this your I have a dream speech?" And I said, well, it's not really quite that inspirational, but I hope that it does give you a sense of our view of what is possible and the transformation that all of us can drive together. So what does transformation look like? Well, really, it's pretty straightforward. You know, it takes a long time to have a big impact. At the beginning, it doesn't seem like you're making much progress. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. And then you start getting a little momentum, and your wins start kind of playing off each other, and you get what we have here, which is an exponential curve, and your impact starts taking off. So those of you remember Linda's opening comments about FSM3 and where we are right now. Well, you know, we got a very interesting thing going on here. This is on the left side, this is the number of people that are showing up to the FSM conference. And you see, you know, starts off very slow. It's growing, 320 people at FSM2, 750 at FSM3. I think you thought that, you know, 1,900 at FSM4, 5,000 at FSM5. That sounds to me like that might be on an exponential curve. But to go back to, like, in general, how does transformation happen? You know, what factors contribute to this kind of take-up of anything, of an idea, of a technology, of a product, of a service? You know, does impact on people's health have an impact? Is that a factor? How about convenience? And I'd say that those are, you know, sometimes factors. How about economics? Cheaper. Always. Economics are the most reliable factor in driving transformation. If you can make something that was too expensive before, all of a sudden within reach of purchasers, whoever they may be, that can transform a system. But what about aspiration? Now, those of us, you know, there are many people in this room, I'm sure, that have learned and then possibly relearned and then perhaps relearned again that it's so easy to say that the solutions for the poorest somehow don't have to be as good as the solutions for the richest, and that there's not the same aspect of aspiration. But I would bet most of us in this room know that aspiration is a huge driver of behavior. It's a huge driver of how households, even the poorest households, spend their money. Aspiration is what government officials, elected officials, get elected on. So aspiration is incredibly important. So, what might be our aspiration for non-sewered sanitation? One thing we need to realize is that today in sanitation there really only is one gold standard. It's the flush toilet connected to a sewer line, connected to a sewage treatment plant. And in fact, that's something that we battle with every day. And in fact, George Michael, in an earlier conversation this week, talked about is FSM, you know, a step towards, so many people he talks to of his clients say they think of FSM as a step towards eventual sewers, and everybody will have sewers. And flush and forget is incredibly appealing. So what I want to say is that we really do collectively need to build another gold standard. Something that is not only far cheaper to build and operate than the traditional sewage systems, but is just as aspirational. And in fact, it's the people in this room. You are the change agents that are working on this, and you are the ones upon which this vision depends. Now, if you think, well, like, why are we even doing that? Why don't we, you know, how are we ever going to convince anybody in a poorer community that doesn't have access to the flush toilet that they should ever want anything else? And I want to ask you, you know, just consider for a moment, can you remember any other time where everyone in developing countries aspired to a service that we had in developed countries, even though it was pretty capital intensive, maintenance intensive? Anything come to mind? Maybe, yeah, I think a few. Well, I'll answer it with another question. How many people do you think in developing countries are really anxiously waiting for that landline telephone to get hooked up? Right? They really can't wait until the government lays down the line to their village or to their home. So, you know, transformative progress is possible. And so that's what I'd really like to talk a little bit about today. But there are many things that need to happen for transformation to take place. And when we talk about innovation, it's too easy for people to think that innovation equals new gizmos, new gadgets, hardware, technologies you can hold. And I think especially at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we get kind of accused of being very technology focused. But in fact, the transformative innovations often are very different. They're around business models, they're around new ways of the different players within a system connecting. They're around different approaches to governance and to regulations. So I want to talk about three areas that we at the foundation have focused on around innovation, both the non-technological approaches and technology. And frankly, you know, it's no surprise because most of the people that are working with us on these innovations are in the room. The first place we looked at was, if it comes down to the economics of non-sewered sanitation, the key overarching goal is how do you make it incredibly cheap as possible for poor households to get their pits emptied. And for them to get their pits emptied in ways that the fecal sludge is treated correctly. Where it's treated, all of the pathogens are removed, that's not polluting their environment or anybody else's. And so we've been focusing on, are there ways to improve both how does a government provide an enabling environment so that entrepreneurs can come in and fill this niche? How can they pick up technological adoptions where those are present? But when you look at what drives the economics of pit emptying, one of the first things you find is the biggest driver in cost, the biggest thing that if you could fix it, you would help households have to pay much less for their pit emptying, and that is how long it takes the emptier to take their truck to the fecal sludge treatment plant. So if you could figure out a way to get fecal sludge treatment plants that were closer to where the sludge is, that would dramatically change the system, the economic system. The other thing that would be remarkable is if you could figure out some way to actually, every time you emptied a pit, maybe separate the liquids out and only take the solids on that trip. Both of those would dramatically change the economics of the situation, and poor households would benefit. So that kind of leads into the next area of innovation, and that is what can we do to make treatment plants contribute to a system that's a lot cheaper, that again leads to households paying far less to hygienically get their fecal sludge taken care of. And here I would say two things need to happen. One thing that I already mentioned, those treatment sites can't be miles and miles and miles outside of town. They need to be closer to town. Well, how's that ever going to work? What that means is they need to be much smaller in size, so they don't take up as much land, because the closer to where people are living, the more expensive and the harder it is to actually get land. But they also can't be loud and they can't smell. They need to be something that would be fine being next to where people are living. So that's a pretty tall order, but it's not unachievable. So imagine if you had treatment plants that could be situated way closer, reduce the trips, and reduce the cost. Now, the other thing that could reduce costs is imagine if those treatment plants were generating something of value. So they had some output that could then be sold, and that economic grease could let them charge less for the trucks that are dropping off their waste, who can then charge less for the household. So those are the two kind of dynamics there from a technology standpoint. But from a non-technological standpoint, there's a huge change that needs to happen. You need to have governments, aware of this and willing to be participants and to be helpful in ensuring that treatment plants are getting sited closer, ensure that those plants have the financing that they need. You know, in our dream, an entrepreneur would be able to buy a piece of property, put down the cement pad, install the equipment, have a place where the trucks offload their waste that doesn't smell, and they'd be in business. And then they still, they need help from the government. They also need financing. And then the third area for possible transformation is imagine if you had a toilet that didn't generate sludge. How many people heard Jay Bhagwan in the first day when he was giving one, right at the end when Linda, of the first session, when Linda said, who can provide some ahas? And Jay stood up and he said, I think we should be thinking about toilets that don't create sludge. Put up your hand if at first you didn't know what he was talking about. So even I, at first, didn't really know what he meant. And I'm like, oh, this is what he's talking about, the thing that we call the reinvented toilet. A toilet that can actually treat all the waste on site without it having to be taken anywhere else. So that's another approach. And it's maybe a little bit further out, but we're making compelling progress. Many people in this room are making remarkable progress at building such a toilet. So, but there's lots of other things that are going to have to come into play. Those toilets will need to get certified. You'll need to know that if you buy one of these, it is actually killing the pathogens. So certification and regulation and government involvement and financing all play as important a role in this kind of transformation as well. So now I want to talk you through a little bit about what transformation might look like if you just looked at a city. And I'm going to start with a slide, the shift flow diagram that probably everybody in this room is familiar with, just to kind of set the context. And then we'll walk through a series of slides that just show a fictional city going through a transformation from very poor fecal sludge management to complete coverage. So this, as you've probably seen, actual city data was from Dhaka, Bangladesh. Great work by Isabel, Peter, Barbara, and other folks who contributed to this at WSP. And it shows a city where only 1% are open defecating. That, of course, is polluting the environment. But 79% are using on-site facilities, and there's no treatment of the waste. So the bulk of that basically gets manually emptied and dumped nearby, or it gets, there's just an overflow from the septic tank. the effluent, completely untreated, pathogen-rich, goes right into the road or the lane or the drain where their kids play, where the animals run, and everybody still has to face the health hazards of fecal contamination. In some cases, they're actually getting mechanically emptied, but there's no place to dump it. It gets dumped in the environment, maybe a little further from home. And then the amazing part of the story is even though 20% is starting with what is seen to be the gold standard, the flush toilet, of that 45%, so 9% of the total, never makes it to the treatment plant. Another 45% makes it to the treatment plant but doesn't get treated, so it goes into the waters. And only 10% of that, 2% overall, is getting actually treated. So now, let's imagine for a second, imagine that this is a city that conforms to what we just saw. And I'll kind of point out what's going on here. So in this area, this is the central business district. And of course, as is typical, if there's a sewer system, the central business district buildings are connected to that. We've maybe got some neighborhoods there who have flush toilets connected to the sewer line. In this area, this is all on-site sanitation. And as you saw from the previous slide, none of this waste is being treated today in year 0. Now, the interesting thing is this really isn't the reality of the situation, because this makes it look, as we go through the years, you'll see blue means the waste is getting treated, brown means it's not getting treated. So here, the problem is that these people all think their waste is getting treated, and at least they don't have to deal with it, and it's not in their neighborhood anymore. But the reality, this is really what it's looking like. Only 10% of that is getting treated. So this is the starting point. You basically have polluted waterways, only 2% of all waste getting treated. So year 0, something amazing happens, and it probably took a long time to get to. Might have taken 3 years, it might have taken 5 years, might have taken 15 years, but year 0 is when the city says, wow, we need to do something about this. So you have some activation level of political will to start to engage in this problem. And of course, that takes a lot of work from people in this room and all of our colleagues back home. But it also takes, basically every time somebody starts this, it gets easier for the next one to start. And I'll get back to that in a sec. But imagine year 0, so it's now year 1. Okay, I'm going to continue, and then you'll catch up and you'll see the actual images. So in year 1, 2 things happen. The city has a nascent fecal sludge management plan, and they cite their first fecal sludge treatment plant. It's off the map, as it typically is. It's outside of town, because it's a traditional fecal sludge treatment plant. But you now have the possibility, like a pit emptier can actually go and empty somebody's pit and do the right thing. Take it to a treatment plant where it's treated, where the pathogens are removed. And so you get the first houses on this side of the river turning blue. In the next year, you actually have the city saying that it's time for us to try one of these new approaches to a treatment plant that can be closer to where people live. So that shows up, and that treatment plant actually changes the economics of pit emptying for everybody near that treatment plant. So now truck emptiers can pick up the sludge. They have a very quick trip to the treatment plant. And perhaps that treatment plant is also making money on the byproducts. To the degree that's possible, more and more households now all of a sudden are able to switch from manual emptying to mechanical emptying. And not only mechanically emptying, not mechanically emptying that's getting dumped in a field, mechanically emptying that is then getting taken to a site for treatment. So that's somewhat transformational, because as soon as that first treatment plant happens, if a year later, if it's not smelling, if it's actually operating, oh, it's this. Okay. And here we are. We're already making progress. Okay, now all of my last clicks are going through. Okay, so here's where we might be at year 4, where you basically have right here that first treatment plant that's in town, and you now have kind of more trucks operating and actually taking the waste to be treated. So, of course, if this is working, then it's very much in the city's interest to do more of it, to basically drive something that's working. So the next thing they do is cite a couple more treatment plants, figure out the financing support that's necessary continue along this transformative curve. But here's where kind of the amazing thing happens, is as soon as this happens, when there's really capacity and the governing body understands that it works, is they can start to do some really transformative things from a regulatory and enforcement standpoint. They can start to, for instance, enforce that you're no longer allowed to dump untreated waste. And so, as I'll call out, each one of these changes in the system, all these houses that are yellow right now, these are all the people who just stopped being serviced by emptiers that would just dump the waste untreated. They're now being serviced by emptiers that are actually taking the waste and getting treated. That's more households, more fecal sludge getting treated. The next thing they might do is they might say, we can now say that all those folks that basically have been leveraging manual emptying, that's also illegal, and we're going to enforce it because there are real alternatives. And in fact, as we see in some places, there may even be a program that takes all that informal activity and helps that get formalized as legitimate emptiers. And then finally, all those septic tanks that are overflowing with completely untreated effluent can also be addressed, again, through regulatory enforcement. So once you have systems that are working, governments have the opportunity, and this doesn't mean, as it might today, that the costs of that households are dramatically going up. Because the system is being changed by the local, much more local treatment, and all these entrepreneurs that are getting in what is now a professionalized and formal and profitable industry, households are very well served. Now, a couple other interesting things. You might have toilets that don't generate any sludge by this time coming out and being adopted. Not only by the first movers, but people who are not well served by septic tanks and by pit latrines, and places where there's flooding. There are a lot of people who will be very excited about the idea of a toilet that can contain its waste and treat it on site. And so you get some more momentum. You have public and community toilets that serve all the last people who are still open defecating. And what you see here is, I believe, a transformation such that by year 7, we're really kind of largely along the way to solving the problem. Now, last few clicks are all about kind of more scale, more treatment capacity, toilets get cheaper, the technologies get cheaper, more entrepreneurs engaging to fill all the necessary capacity. And this certainly by year 10, another thing's happened, which is a city that really wants to get to 100%. And I'm hoping that due to the SDGs, every city in the world and every country is measuring and focused on reducing the amount of untreated waste that's going into the environment. At this point, you can even imagine that all the sewer lines are working and the sewage treatment plant is at full capacity. And you now have a city that truly actually is 100% served. So some people might say that this is, Brian, 10 years, that's ridiculous. You call yourself impatient optimist? That's so slow. And I'm sure others of you are like, 10 years, what a dream. What is Brian smoking? It's actually going to take 20 years. But that's not the point. The point is that it's possible, and this interplay between new options that from a technology standpoint enable new options from a regulatory standpoint, and that everything that anybody's doing to help FSM get a little bit more viable and to help more success stories out there contributes to this momentum. So, my last slide. What was really necessary for such a transformation? Well, obviously it started with political will. You need the interest from the countries, the states, the cities. Now, a fascinating thing about this conference, if you think what was the difference between 120 or 320 people and now 750 plus? We have a lot of people from government. We have an amazing host in Vietnam that is doing remarkable things. They are investing in fecal sludge management at a very impressive level. We have people here from the government of India who are committed to engage on this problem in ways that are unlike anything we've seen before. So there's absolutely change happening on this level. But a key observation I wanted to make is for that to continue and for that to accelerate, citizen demand is essential. So there's a huge component around behavior change and communication to get people to understand that there are options, that other places this is starting to work, and to demand it of their own governments. And then if there's one takeaway that I have from this conference and that I want all of you to take away is that success breeds success. It's very hard for, we were meeting with people from ADB. So another remarkable thing, I think that there are perhaps as many as 60 people from the Asian Development Bank participating in FSM3. And when I asked them last night, how many people would have been participating in FSM2? They said 0. And why is that? Because they've basically galvanized and activated around this opportunity, which is that they can more effectively serve their clients if they really better understand what their options are around fecal sludge management. And the thing that's going to make it easier for the 3rd and 4th and 5th ADB project officer to convey the value of fecal sludge management will be the successes of the 1st and 2nd. Some of the things I've been most excited by, I learned in talking to Joe from Blantyre, from the waste group, about some of the amazing things happening in Blantyre. That I wasn't familiar with their successes there. Those successes can be replayed. They can turn into a case study that should be able to make the next city government a little bit more likely to invest. Similarly, the very exciting things we hear about Dakar and Mbai's great presentation earlier this year. So all of you are participating you're investing in making fecal sludge management work better, and you have your successes. And so one of the things I think we need to do is to figure out how to share those successes better and capitalize on them. And I think that started on Monday. It's not going to end, and that's what I really look forward to us talking about. How do we make sure that continues and that we build on each other? Obviously, you need successful planning, and it's particularly hard if you look at so few cities in many regions do this already. We suffer from a serious lack of human capacity. So that's a key challenge. We need to be investing in training. We need to figure out the experts and figure out how to get those experts to scale up that expertise. And there I believe that tools are key. And so we're increasingly focused on tools that help different roles, whether it's the financial planner for the city, whether it's the person responsible for the implementation, whoever it is, take a look at what can I do to actually diagnose my current situation? What can I do to model out the different interventions that I could engage in and what impact they might have? And then how do I implement it? So I think a huge opportunity for tools. And one of the best things that's happening is the tool builders. Many of you were already building tools. The interactions and the convergence and the integration that's happening is fantastic, incredibly exciting. Obviously, you need to have feedback loops that refine the plans. The folks in the military have this saying that says that no plan survives the first encounter with the enemy. And I bet that's true of fecal sludge management. In other words, the plan in year 0 might have been great. The likelihood that it's still the plan in year 5 or year 10 is really remote. So how do we build in the feedback loops and the learning as a sector in ways that can help people working at a city level? Obviously, you need access to innovations. And as I've said, these are new approaches, business models that are working in one city. What does it take to replicate them in another? If a call-in center really helps change the economics for a poor household in Dakar, how could one replicate that in all the ecosystem around it? What are the public-private partnerships structures that really work and lead to high-quality service delivery? Obviously, new technology options make new approaches possible. And then, of course, we need new financing options. So that's my call to action, frankly, is that most of you are engaged in some aspect of this challenge. And to the degree that we're siloed, we need to stop being siloed. To the degree that you've got things to share, you need to share them. And we and folks on my team are very much invested in helping you share your successes and your best practices. So if you talk to nobody else, talk to us. What role will you play? What role will you take away from this conference to ensure that you're learning from success stories and contributing to them? And that's all I have. I look forward to a good panel.
Brian, thank you very much for such a motivating and inspiring speech. I think everybody really enjoyed that. As a follow-up, now what we're going to do is we're going to have an all-star expert panel on fecal sludge management. So I'd like to invite them to go ahead and come up while the stage is being set up, and I'll just inform you a little bit about what's going on. So I've asked each panelist to just take 3 to 4 minutes to talk about, after 3 days of Faecal FSM3, what they feel is working, how we can harness this current momentum and growing awareness of FSM to make positive changes, and how they envision a future with sustainable fecal sludge management. I've also picked on a few young professionals and students in the audience who I'm going to call on and ask them to ask them some key messages they got out of FSM3 and are bringing forward with them, and also open the floor for a few questions from you. So if we could go ahead and bring the panel up, then I'll introduce them. So Isabel Blackett is from the Water and Sanitation Program of the World Bank, and she's going to comment specifically on policy, funding, and enabling environment issues. Mbaye Mbegere, who's from ONAS, which is the National Sanitation Utility of Senegal, and he's going to talk about changing role of stakeholders in financial flows. Tamarat Kudetep, who from the Asian Institute of Technology in Thailand, who's going to focus on treatment technology. Olafunke Kofi from the International Water Management Institute in Ghana, from Resource Recovery, and also Brian Arbogast from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We would like to invite him back up as well. Okay, so thank you very much for volunteering.
I think something we've really learned is that solid research and evidence and combined with compelling communications is the basis of convincing advocacy. And that convincing advocacy can lead to improved policy and government commitment. And it can actually do that quite quickly. Almud gave an example of how Indonesia sees fetal sludge management as the main game for sanitation going forward and for achieving universal access. And we heard from other people in other situations where it's the same thing. I think we're getting a lot better at that advocacy and that communications, but we still have a lot of FSM skeptics out there, so we need to get even better. So harnessing the enthusiasm. I mean, this week's just the numbers, the enthusiasm, the life, it's been fantastic. And we know that loads of stakeholders are collaborating already. I mean, how many presentations have you seen with multiple logos up there? But I think as we move forward, and to do that quickly, we actually need to increase that collaboration, trust and partnerships. There's a huge amount of work to be done, and I think there's no room for us to be competing with each other. We actually need to show what a global teamwork can achieve. We all need to pitch in, get our hands dirty, then wash them with soap. And we need to share our just-in-time learning. And we need to be honest about our successes and our failures. We've got to be prepared to talk about them. Well, part of this, I think, is actually getting an agenda of what is not being done. And we tend to come to these conferences and we talk about what we are doing. And certainly I'm beginning to see that there's certain gaps. And I think we've got to together identify what some of those gaps are and then have an agenda of which we don't all work on the same things and others get left out, but we actually share that around. And we need to get this applied research going, and we need to have mechanisms for sharing it quickly. And finally, my vision for the next few years is that FSM moves from tool development and research and pilots to working at scale and learning as we work and evaluating. Rather, as Mbaye has outlined for Dakar, for those of you who were in that session, this is doable, it can happen, and other people have shown that too. So I think by FSM4, we're going to have a lot more examples of FSM in practice at scale, and the lessons we've learned from it. And we're going to achieve that only if we take political economy and stakeholders' interests much more seriously than we are now. Several people talked about political economy and stakeholders' interests, but we all need to be talking about it, including the people who are looking at the technical issues. And the other final point I'm going to finish with is capacity building. I'm hearing from everybody in every country that there's a huge shortage of capacity. And we cannot just rely on universities churning out people in 5-10 years' time. We've got to have a whole lot of just-in-time, new, innovative capacity building. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. Excellent comments. Next, I'd like to invite Mbaye Mbegere.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Isabel. In my short intervention, I just want to share with you some tools which show that we can involve better the private sector. Because in my belief, we need to go further in the paradigm shift. We need to make sanitation in general and fecal sludge management in particular a business. For me, business is a key word. How we can achieve it. In Dhaka, for instance, we work to improve the condition for the exercise of emptying activity with a private sector recognized and well organized. In the beginning, we realized that people working on fecal sludge management was well recognized. They are under considered, and in this condition, we cannot build something without having some strong actors, well recognized, well motivated, and well engaged. And we work also to structure the fecal sludge market. Because, and we realize that an implementation of a call center, this is an innovative tool, thanks to the Gate Foundation we implement in Dhaka. And this call center match the supply and the demand of FSM services and increase the market share of MTS. Because we talk about business, we talk about profitability. The objective is to work to improve, to enhance the market share of MTS. And we also, this call center can allow us to introduce a healthy competition between MTS. And all this will lead to the decrease of the emptying cost, because this is the objective. We talk a lot about fecal sludge management, but the objective is to allow to poor people to access to mechanical emptying, to stop using manual emptying, to stop going inside pit to empty them. This is why it is very important to work on that. And two seemingly contradictory objectives have been achieved in Dhaka. That is, first, to increase the profitability of MTS. This is a good deal, and also to lower the cost. How we can balance that? But in Dhaka, we arrive with the call center by putting in competition these actors to decrease the cost of these mechanical emptying. What is the role of the government? It is very important. The public sector will give the opportunity to the private sector to do what it can do the best in the fecal sludge value chain. For me, operation system and optimized system is a role that the private sector can do better than the government. It is why we have to involve them in this perspective. And in Dhaka, the government decided to privatize all the existing. In the beginning, we face several difficulties to balance the cost of this plant. They are not profitable. This is a little bit amazing to operate them. And when we privatize, we realize that we enhance and we improve the profitability of the technical operation of this plant, but also we make them profitable. My utility every month get cash from this fecal sludge treatment plant. This is something very important. And the government will, however, strongly ensure its regulatory role for sustainable operation of the system through continuous monitoring in order to guarantee equity among MTS. And all this scheme cannot be set up without a clear legislative and institutional organization. Many utilities come to Senegal and visit us and say, we have to implement the call center. We have to implement a guarantee fund. We have to do that. But we have to know that before, there's a strong job to conduct in order to organize all this sector. Right now, every knowledge has been gathered in several countries. This is why, through this FSM3 conference, we need to develop a strong benchmarking policy in order to learn each other, in order to achieve a better fecal sludge management system worldwide. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you. Next we'll ask Tamarat to address specifically technology and the role of technology.
Okay, thank you very much, Linda. I think I don't have much thing to say about the technology because Brian talked a lot on that already about innovations. What does it mean? The transformation of the technologies. I have been involved in this fecal sludge management in the research, in the technology development in the past 20 years at least, together with the SANDEC team. I found out that this conference would be one of the best conferences that we talk deeply about that what are the technology that can solve the problem. Instead of that, we develop the technology for the sake of that publication. I feel that in many of the scientific conference or the session or the workshop, just aim at that we would need to have the publications. We have the sophisticated modeling whatsoever, but here I'm very happy, I'm very encouraging to see that our research, our paper talk about the technology for the development for the people who are waiting for the system. I think that I'm very happy to brief about that, to be brief about that. The emptying technology, it doesn't mean only the vacuum trucks that we used to have in the past. There are so many variety of that. But my concern is that after having the very good technologies from the emptying to the transportation, what should be better if we can treat in the same time in the truck, in the emptying the facilities, and then we can reduce the cost for the transportation. So that I think it would be the room that we can improve in the futures. I'm sure that the treatment, the reuse, we talked a lot for today for to transfer the waste to the energy, to the transfer the waste to the compost, and many other factors on the health assessment context on that. So that I think the room that I can challenge to you that if possible, why don't we treat the sludge in the way which that the people can reuse on site, doesn't need to retreat or to transfer to the other site, so that we can reduce the cost. As Bai said, that would be good if we can find the profitable business services for the people. Then they will have an encouraging to invest more or to get the better service, not just only emptying and discharge somewhere else, but emptying with the treatment. So that I think that would be the new ideas that we should work together, and then with the business model, with the planning, then it doesn't mean that, okay, we pinpoint that this is a treatment plan, and then we have to travel again that 20 kilometers, 30 kilometers away just for dispose, for treatment. But why don't we have the on-site treatment as well at the site, and then people can use at household level? That is my challenge to all of you. And then with the 10 years time, as Brian mentioned, it's not that long, but we need a very good research to do about that, to compete with his vision in a 10 years time, so that we can reduce the fecal sludge management problem in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamarat. Next, we'll ask Ola Funke to talk specifically about resource recovery.
Okay, thank you very much, Linda. I've been very excited in the last 3 days for two reasons. First is that there are an increasing number of people talking about fecal sludge management, unlike previous years. And more importantly, that people are emphasizing the aspect of reuse. So it's not so much about collection and transportation. Again, people are aware that there's need to use. There are more options, reuse options being discussed in several of the workshops that we had. So it's very important that we see that there are other sectors that are also coming in, not just the sanitation sector. So that is very gratifying for me. And I want to say that, there is increasing awareness on the reuse. I think it gets talked somewhere. I mean, when I listen to the presentations and all that, which is very great, I realize that when it comes to scaling, when it comes to going to the market, we are kind of stuck at the moment because we don't have very many examples of success cases or business models, or business enterprises on reuse. And I think that's something that we need to pay close attention to in the coming years, so that by the time we're going to have FSM4 and 5 and thereon, we'll have more stories to tell on the reuse. I think in addition to the book, the FSM book that has been published, the business model catalog that is going to be published by IMI and partners will be very helpful in helping us to be able to move reuse into more business enterprises across the globe. So I think in the coming months, you look out for that. That will surely help us to move this thing forward. Market is very important. As I mentioned in one of the sessions that we had last, market is the missing link when it comes to reuse now. We need to be able to say which reuse option is feasible where. So it's not so much about, okay, we focus on this energy or focus on agri or whatever, but across the globe, in the South, we need to be able to say that this particular, to map reuse options to particular local context, and this is where the political economy comes in, this is where different actors need to be characterized to know what exactly do they need from their perspectives and factor that into our scenario planning, and what do they need, in what form do they need it, and how much do they need, in what quantity, how much are they going to pay for it, and all that, and all those questions. I think we really need to go deeper into that. There are a few cases on pilots here and there, but I think we need to do more in that direction in the coming years. In doing that, we need to think beyond sanitation. We need to open up, even meetings like this to other sectors, in the energy sector, agriculture sector, to the private sector. These are investors that are going to really, take it to business. I want to say, Brian, that the transformation we're talking about will not be complete without the reuse component. We really need to focus on the reuse and think about closing the loop, not just wasting these resources. So we should pay more emphasis on that. When we bring people together, there's a lot to benefit from economies of scope, and we have different perspectives. And where we think that we're going to generate funds, may necessarily not be the place we're going to generate the funds. So we need to learn from past failures. It's not so much to focus on just the donors or the public sector, but the private sector too can really drive some of these reuse options. So we need to open up and engage them more. That is all for me from now. Thank you.
Thank you. So you already heard some of Brian's thoughts in his presentation. Do you have any more burning issues you want to bring up now, or should I?
Sorry, there we go. What I was going to say is when it comes to, it's not just political will, institutional clarity is incredibly important, that there are clear roles and responsibilities. And so if you look at the great advances that are happening in Dakar that Mbaye has spoken about, it starts with the fact that there's ONAS, there's a single utility that's focused, very clearly accountable for driving sanitation practices. And then the next innovation that came along was an institutional innovation and a business model innovation. The whole call center, there's a little bit of technology in the form of software, but 90% of that is just envisioning a different business model for how the citizens of Dakar can actually get their emptying services. And that innovative approach is what led to the drop in prices and a much higher service quality. And then finally, the next innovation was really around what ONAS did from a different approach to a public-private partnership. And the handoff of the operations of the Faecal sludge treatment plant has led to the treatment plants are open twice as many hours, and the whole system is working again with better economics for everyone. So all that happened, and now when we look at our first Janaki Omni processor, the device that Bill Gates drank the water out of, when we look at where should we put that in the field to first be tested, of course we're sending it to Dakar because everything else is set. And so it's a great example of how all of that kind of environmental, enabling environment was set up first, that now we think that's as good a place as any for us to see how can the technology start to add to the system.
Thanks, Brian. So I think we've had a lot of great advice now from 5 professionals who've been working for quite a while in the field, but I also want to hear sort of some comments from the younger voices here. And so I picked out a few young professionals and students and just asked them what was some key take-home message that they got from the conference that they would like to take with them in the future and that they will be able to use when they're working on sustainable solutions. So if you have the microphone, I'd like to just call on them in the audience so that they could just speak directly from the audience. And I would start out with Alhaji Mamadou Sanko from Dakar, Senegal. There's Sanko there.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Elhaj Mamadou Sonko from the University of Dakar. I want to say that it's a good pleasure for me to stand in this audience to share with you my feelings about the FSM3 conference. Let me first congratulate the organizer for the success of this session, and also the Gate Foundation that have been funding my participation to this FSM3 conference. I can say that this conference has met all my expectations because it has allowed me to expand my knowledge about FSM. I understood that now FSM requires multidisciplinary approach, jointed and integrated action for different actors, and the development of a big network of different experts in this field. I would like also to point out what I have retained in this FSM3 conference through some of keywords. The first keyword is fecal sludge. It is a common denominator that met all of us together in this room. Some of keywords are being developed through this keyword fecal sludge. I can say treatment, business, I can also take bioresource recovery, etc., etc. These keywords show that the main importance of the fecal sludge management now is to make fecal sludge a profitable business. So it's a big deal now for the actors of the FSM. The last one, finally, I want to emphasize the last keyword, that is Hanoi, because I want by this keyword to thank the FSM3 Legal Committee for the good organization, the support, and the hospitality. And I can try to say them in Vietnamese, Kam on ban, apologize for the pronunciation.
Thank you very much, Sanko. You have no idea how happy your comments make me. Next, I would like to call on Fatmani Chusankam from SNV in Laos. She's right back there in the back middle. If you could bring her the microphone, please.
My name is Petmani Chusankam. I'm a water, sanitation, and hygiene advisor for SNV Netherlands Development Organization in Laos. So I'm very appreciated to join. This is my first time of joining the conference of FSM. And then it's very new topic for me as well, and for Laos country, because to start initiate activity about FSM in the future. What I have learned, and also our government partner also come along with us, we had learned about a lot from the government of Vietnam is how to improve good governance in terms of the regulation framework and how to engage with the private sector in the treatment plant business. And then we had learned about that we should not forget about the business communication campaigns to improve the awareness of the communities and the household, why they need to pay for the fee on the connection. And of course, is a lot of things need to go. And what we also learned about that a lot of technologies and how to reuse a fecal sludge in terms of the how to use it as a fertilizer, also charcoals for fuels. And but we still had a few questions to remind ourselves as well and other people that when we reuse the sludge, we're not sure that it's safe enough for agriculture or vegetables. Because in our country, we eat vegetable directly. So we're not sure that it's safe enough to use as a fertilizer. And the second question we also still have keep in mind about health impact. Because we've seen a lot of presentation that the empty pitter still not safe enough during they empty the pit because they don't put the mask, they are not wear the gloves. We're also concerning about their health whenever they are empty the pit. So I would say that in coming years, of course, SNV Lao and the partner, we're going to do something to pilot the activity with the private sector that we learned from Vietnam. And also we need to thinking about how to do assessment on the health impact and in agriculture as well. Thank you very much. Yep.
Thank you very much. Those are great comments for moving forward. Since you actually had 2 questions in there, I think I'll ask the panel if they have a few thoughts on that. I'm certain they do, especially Funky about the safety of resource recovery products from fecal sludge.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, what we are discussing here is not about just promoting something for the sake of promoting it. We're talking about something that is safe. If it's not safe, we shouldn't even talk about it at all. So part of what science, why we researchers are supposed to bring science to bear on FSM to ensure that we can safely recover the resources. So the product, that any product we talk about in reuse, it should be safe. That is non-negotiable. So we don't talk about scaling or use without safety. Safety following WHO guidelines, safety following local guidelines as much as possible. So there are established procedures to ensure safety, so you can check on that. And when I talked about scaling and markets, I'm talking about reuse options that have been established. I mean, we still need research to optimize processes for several reuse options. We can create more. I mean, there's no end to that. We can innovate more. But there are some that are already established when it comes to organic matter, nutrients, energy recovery. All those ones are already fairly established and ready to go to scale. And that is why I said that we need to really understand the demand out there to be able to do that. So in terms of safety, there are established procedures to ensure safety. So I don't think it's a problem.
I agree with her. Thank you. I actually have a lot of opinions, but I'll keep them to myself. But maybe we could talk even more about that at dinner. I'd like to also call in a student from South Africa, William Musazura. He's right there in the back. You could give him the microphone.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to start by conveying my sincere gratitude to all the stakeholders and organizations for their splendid contribution in ensuring to making this congregation a success. When we look at fecal sludge management, it seems as if it's a global problem which is affecting everybody. But on the contrary, it can be a global solution. When we look at other main factors which are affecting the world, factors such as the population increasing, the demographic trends, where there are high rates of population, especially in the developing countries, where the cities are generating a lot of fecal sludge. How are we going to manage that fecal sludge? So there are many problems that they are being faced. They are dependent on the areas where people come from. For example, from another presentation I attended, they were talking about the factors such as water scarcity can also affect the feasibility of other waterborne sanitation solutions, why people they are now opting for other non-waterborne sanitation solutions, such as the VIP toilets. The management of the sludge is now a major focus for everyone, especially when you're looking on an environmental perspective. But also, I've seen some other innovations that has come up in place, such as the reuse of the fecal sludge in the production of biofuels. And I've seen another presentation where they were talking about the production of charcoal in Uganda. This also is another thing which we've got a promising future when you are looking at factors environmental factors which are now we are crying with factors such as global warming and also energy crisis. When we reuse the sheet, it's like we are now trying to reduce the use of trees for energy sources. In an indirect way, we are conserving the environment, and also we are also solving another problem which we are having, especially the use of non-renewable resources, which are likely to deplete over a long period of time. And also, overall, there is a lot of information all over the world whenever it comes to the issue of sanitation. But now there is a big need to integrate all the information around the world in coming up with the one way forward towards making making sanitation achievable. And also, I've looked from different presentations. I've seen that the major backlog in the technology transfer is especially the people lack knowledge on these sanitations. We got the knowledge within us as scientists, as stakeholders, and now how can we transfer the knowledge to the people who need the technology? That is the major focus which should be looked into. And also, when I look at this Faecal sludge management, to me, it seems as if it's a way forward to food security, global energy crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, William. I think that again pointed out the importance you were saying, a multi-sector, multi-field approach. We can't just rely on one thing. Finally, I would like to call on one more person, Trevor Surridge from GIZ and SuSanA in Germany. Trevor.
My main takeaway from this conference is actually on the soft side, and that's the power of communication. That might sound a little bit cheesy, but I'll tell you why. We as a community are growing and have FSM prioritized, which is wonderful to see. And it is also great how many complementary projects and work is currently going on and has been discussed here. And this conference, FSM3, has allowed all these different people working on these complementary projects to, in some cases, learn about each other's work and meet each other in person. And from my side, and this is my takeaway, begin important conversations. And these important conversations, I'm confident, will continue and ultimately lead to better SFM. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trevor. You can excuse yourself now. I think we can't stress the importance of communication. That's definitely a good point. I'm going to call on one more person just because I think they have a very interesting comment, what they were taking away. I'd like to call on Andy Narrowcut from What's Up and hear what he got out of one of the sessions. He's right here in the middle front. If you could bring in the mic.
Thank you. Hello? Hello. Yes, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to comment. So yeah, I was in yesterday in one of the sessions, the odor session, and I just thought, it really hit me that odor, no, it's okay, it's working. Is it working? Thank you. So odor is one of the critical factors that raises demand and increases the willingness to pay for sanitation. It was a bit of a relevant. And this plays to your point, Brian, about aspiration. No one wants to pay for or buy a smelly toilet, right? So, and by odor or malodor, I mean, anything that creates or inhibits malodor, and that can be from, physical barriers. It can be with fragrance. It's cutting in and out. Lots of things around malodor. Two reasons for that. Does anyone want to replace this microphone, or am I just going to keep cutting in and out? Thank you. If I've got something to say, I want to be able to say it, and you hear me. Okay. So two main reasons. Number one, around financing for sanitation, right? So the largest portion of financing for sanitation has to come from the households. And you want people to be able to pay for sanitation. They're not going to be able to pay for a smelly toilet. World Bank study about financing sanitations, there was a case study in Vietnam that showed 20 times more financing came from households than public between 2001 and 2008. So it really shows that you've really got to get odor and aspiration right for people to invest in sanitation. And secondly, I think Mr. Jenny from the ADB mentioned the case about Britain and investing in sewers, and he mentioned the commercial reasons as well. But actually, wasn't it about odor? Wasn't it about people, politicians, sitting in the Houses of Parliament and smelling the sewerage out in the River Thames outside that motivated them to action? And I'm sure it was also all of the voters as well who was complaining about it. So I'd like to see more research around odor, around aspiration, around things that trigger householders and consumers, everyday consumers, to pay for sanitation. Thank you.
Thank you. So unfortunately, we have pretty limited time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pose one question to the panel, and then I'll take a couple more from you, and then we'll have to wrap it up there. But we have the rest of the night to talk over dinner. So my question to the panel is just a bit difficult and a bit open-ended, because there's so much talk now about markets, private sector, but in the end, sanitation is a public good. So what is the role of public sector? And cities, I mean, we heard this, I think, was it Isabel that mentioned it in her presentation, that a lot of cities won't go for FSM as their main goal because we don't have successful examples to hold up yet. And then Brian mentioned an excellent case of Dakar where there is political will and institutional capacity. So my question is, how do we get this? And I just wanted to hear a little bit from each of you on what your thought is, or some thoughts. You know, it's a good question if no one jumps at it.
Okay, again, I'm talking from reuse perspective, right? Okay. How do we get the public support? Like I mentioned when I was speaking that it's important to think about other sectors. So from a reuse perspective is to know which public, first of all, what kind of the public organizations or sectors that actually has a stake in this reuse, for example. Let me give you an example. In sub-Saharan Africa, when we talk about fertilizer use for agriculture, there's a gap. The average use is about 9 kilograms per hectare. The world average is about over 90 kilograms per hectare. So there's no access, it's expensive and all that. In many farm areas, people already, there's demand, for alternatives, okay? So for all you know, it could be that beyond sanitation, beyond the Ministry of Local Government that is responsible for sanitation and all that, maybe Ministry of Agriculture that is interested in taking the resources that is in fecal sludge and converting it to agriculture and wanting to promote it. So, and energy is also there and all that, and women affairs, Ministry of Women Affairs to look at women participation, which is something that I find missing also in many of the presentations, the gender perspectives of this, of some of the innovations that we're talking about. So I would say is to be able to identify the stake of different public entities and to be able to use that as an entry point in talking with them to be able to get their support, particularly in the area that is of concern to them. I mean, to some extent, in some pilots, we see this happening, and I mean, this kind of engagement has to take place, and then we'll see how we can learn from places where it has been successful, and then we see how we can replicate such in other places. So, multi-sectoral approach. Usually, our planning systems, particularly in developing countries, is such that it's not integrated. So we need to be able to integrate, our planning process. That in FSM, think about other sectors that have a stake, get their buy-in, and use that to get their support also in. And they can contribute in different ways. If I give an example in terms of reuse, the public sector can contribute treatment facilities, land, for construction of plant. We had that example in Ghana. And they can contribute to collection. They can support the access to the waste itself. They can support, even with cash, they can support in different ways. Yeah, but it all depends on the local context and to know what is feasible and what is the best entry point. Thank you.
Thank you.
For me, as from the point of the treatment technologies, I think instead of thinking that we should treat the fecal sludge for the public as a service, but why don't we think in a way which that the people would like to use the technologies and they would like to buy the technology by themselves? Similar to that, the public phone in the past, we have the long queue to get the public phone, to call to my mom, to call to your mom, whatsoever. But nowadays, the technology, we should think carefully to in a way, to let the people would like to use, willing to use, and would like to buy as well. I think that would be the key points, that we cannot just wait the foundation, the development banks, and CSR fund to provide all the service to the people. I don't think that that would be enough to reach to the 2.6 or many more people, billion in our globe. Wait for that, the technologies. I think that the technology, in my views, that it should drive by the investor, by the factory, by the manufacturer, that try to reduce the cost. As a researcher, I got the criteria from the foundation. Hey, you should as low as possible the cost. But as a prototype, it may not be possible. But in a commercial scale, in a mass scale, it may be. So that if we can link the treatment technologies with the manufacturer in the mass production, I think it would be the way which we can ensure the people would like to use at the low cost. And in addition to that, our technology would have should have a kind of aspirations in a way that they're willing to use with their beautification and pride to have that the toilets, pride to have that the fecal sludge treatment, like Professor Hoffman mentioned about that his technology is nice, but he has to integrate with the designer to encourage the people to use such a technology, even if a bit more expensive. But they would like to use, they're willing to use. I think that can help our fecal sludge management can be at speed to cover the needs for the people who have no fecal sludge treatment or management system. That's my view.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tamarat. How to get this?
Yeah.
How we arrive to a better fecal sludge management system? For me, on the basis, the political will is something very important. We have to work to make politicians prioritizing fecal sludge management. We need also to sensitize people in order to put sanitation in the top list of their need. People want to have a good TV, a good LED TV, a good phone, a good cell phone, than a good latrine. It is why pushing people to prioritize sanitation, to put it in their top list, is something very important. By doing this, the politician will change their way of thinking, because they need in the election to get the voice of these people. And if sanitation are in their top list, for sure, they will take it into consideration. Something is very important is also capacity building. We don't have enough curricula in our university talking about fecal sludge. In my utility, 90% of engineers are very comfortable with sewer network, are very comfortable with activated sludge. But when we talk about something like latrine, something like VIP, ventilated improved pit latrine, they become uncomfortable. In this condition, pushing these people to conduct and develop politics on fecal sludge will be difficult. It is why we have to think how at our university, we can improve the curricula and take a big part, consider for fecal sludge. We have also to focus on innovation. And I talk with researchers. We talk a lot about sanitation, but innovation, like Gate Foundation is doing, is very important. Because in my belief, business is very important. When Gate Foundation tried to implement in Dhaka an OP, an omniprocessor, which can produce electricity, which can produce drinking water, which can produce ash for fertilizers, for sure, you can change the face of fecal sludge if you have several engines like this, because it is not the government who work to implement them. As a private, I will buy them because I know beyond I can have cash. This is why it is important to think about innovative and to focus on business. Thank you. This is my belief.
So if your question was, what is the role of the public sector? My answer to that is the role of the private sector, the public sector, is to make it happen, which isn't the same as they have to do it or pay for it, but they have to ensure that the entire chain is happening. And they have to, I mean, this can involve a lot of things. It can involve ensuring that the conditions are not hospitable, they are conducive for the private sector to be active, encouraging the private sector. But they also need to keep an eye on the private sector and monitor them, because we've many examples of the private sector doing their own thing, which is not safe or hygienic. Ensuring that financing is available for the parts that need it. In some cases, the public sector will do things like building treatment plants, but they then need to ensure that they are operated and maintained properly. So there's, and when I'm saying this, it all sounds very simple, but it's actually just what the public sector is not doing. And that's a big step forward. And that involves the entire institutional policy, planning, and budget cycle. But the main thing for me is that they ensure that it happens.
And then Brian.
So I'd say just two things quickly. I think it's the public sector that needs to actually bootstrap the system. If you think of kind of my city transformation, up until the point where the first few sites are there and they're enforcing regulations that can actually make so you can compete in the marketplace by doing the right thing and actually treating the waste. I think it's hard to imagine just the private sector bootstrapping fecal sludge management that doesn't already exist in a city. But thereafter, I think the key thing is clarity. The government has to provide clarity. So that's rules and regulations. It is that key part of the enabling environment so that the entrepreneurs and all the other actors know what to expect and can count on it.
Great, thank you. Sorry, the question I asked took quite a bit of time, and we're frankly running out of time. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and end the panel discussion there. Say thank you very much again to all the participants, and it was a very fruitful discussion, I think. We're almost finished. We just have a few key more things that we need to discuss. And one of them that's very important is our partner Viet An Yen from IESE and the session Focus on Vietnam. And he's going to now come up and give us a 5 to 10 minute summary and some of the most important take-home points from this session. Viet An.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I know for you at this moment, it's better to try Vietnamese food rather than to listen to outcomes of Vietnamese section. But anyway, we had a really good section, and at the end we have got very good advices from Isabel, from Magali, and from Dulai, and that's why now in return we would like to share with you some information about that section, and I hope this information also useful for you. We have very good audience, 120 participants, and we covered on aspects including techniques, management, technologies, and latest research results, etc. I would skip key information. I just want to say here, we have different cities trying with the fecal sludge management, and different cities are trying in different ways. Because of history, because of our understanding of the policy makers and the different settings up. Now I go to recommendation. We need to include Faecal sludge more in regional and in city planning that we know. And FSM solution should be locally appropriate. And integration with, together with wastewater and solid waste management. We cannot separate it and do it alone. And then we need comprehensive feasibility studies in each city, which aim at enable an environment, business opportunities, technical setup. And we know that sludge as a resource, but we have to find good economic tools to make it happen. And for us, local government play a very important role in Faecal sludge management. So we have to engage them into the game. And there are the different technical solutions, but we need suitable business model so that we could use technical solutions sustainably. And for us, for developing countries, I think we can have facilities, you can have projects in phases. In the first phase, we should train people and let the system run in a sustainable way and recover the expenditures. That's why we could start with simple technologies. And with the vision in future, we will upgrade it with more complicated technologies. The finance, city budget so far for us is still a primary financial source, but step by step we can increase the wastewater tariffs and look for other funding sources to make FSM sustainable and fully recovered. We have different ways. Innovations are needed to have different financial sources. And again, very important, household connection. We need that so that household could be involved and they could pay for the service. And recommendation, again, final, we have to engage, we have to recognize the importance of private sector. And we need capacity building, but not only for different stakeholders like private sector and households. We need capacity building also for decision makers, leaders. And the platform as FSM3 is really needed since we are just starting. And the pathway is still not yet clearly identified. So we are learning from each other, and let's continue to work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that excellent and concise summary. I think it's great because we learned so much about Vietnam while we were here, and it'd be a shame to travel all the way here and just sit inside the hotel for 3 days. And it's also interesting because you're really facing the same challenges that we're talking about with the whole conference and that we're facing everywhere. I just wanted to make just a couple housekeeping comments. The abstracts, as we have said, are all available on the SuSanA website. And eventually the presentations will also be posted there. Please be patient, it'll take a bit of time to edit them. So we'll send out an update email when that's happening. Also, if you are interested in publishing your paper in the IWA WashDev Journal, you have officially about 5 more minutes before the final deadline to get it submitted. With that, I would just like to welcome Chibe Vinstra from the Innovation of Cities, who's the conference organizer and has a few very important things to tell you about, including about how to get to dinner tonight.
I have only some logistics to announce. First, dinner, conference dinner. The conference dinner will take place in Sen Restaurant. Sen means lotus in Vietnamese. It is near the West Lake, and it has a lotus garden. The first bus will leave at 6:30. We will have 5 buses leaving in front of the Melia Hotel, and these buses are leaving when they are full. The last bus will depart at 7:15, and we have then hope to have transported around 220 people. Everybody who has signed up will be allowed. We have invited all moderators during the moderator session on Sunday afternoon. I haven't had a confirmation from 18, but everybody who is a moderator is cordially invited to visit the dinner. That was about the dinner. The address, some people ask me for the address because they want to go at their own transport. It's Sen Restaurant near the West Lake. The address is 614 Lac Long Quan Street in the Tai Hoi district, Hanoi. Workshops. Tomorrow we will have 5 workshops. 1A, we have now 37 participants. 1B, 33. Workshop 2, 44. Workshop 3, 29. And workshop 4, 17. And we have still to divide 65 participants across these workshops. So the total number of people attending the workshops is around 200. Then I would like to say something about the field trips. There are around 24 people who are going for a 2-day trip to Halong Bay. The bus will leave at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning at the entrance of the Melia Hotel. Do not forget to take your passport with you. Then the field trip to Haiphong on Friday. The 2 buses for Haiphong will leave at 7 o'clock at the entrance, from the entrance at the Melia Hotel, and lunch is served for. And the field trip to Hanoi, the half day, starts with a lunch here at 12 o'clock. Tomorrow, the workshops will take place at level 1 and level 2, and we will assign the rooms to the workshops depending on the number of people and the seats. So you go tomorrow to level 1, level 2. It's well signposted, and we want to start at 9 sharp, so please be here at 8:30. Thank you very much.
Yes? That's good, because you want to be sure to be fresh for the workshop tomorrow.
Yeah, sorry, but I thought from experience I never mention when you go back, because it could be very cozy. But we will leave at around, I think, 10 o'clock, and I hope that we can divert the buses so that some people can be dropped at their hotels. We try. Otherwise, you will be dropped at the Melia Hotel.
I would just like to say again one more time, thank you to Julia Ackermans and Chibe for all the organization they've done. I would also just say to Rebecca, this is the last time I'm going to announce anything about Faecal Sludge Truck Trump games on stage, but there are a few more remaining. We'll leave them at the door in case you didn't get one or in case you'd like to take a couple extra with you. And with that, I would just like to introduce Dulai Kone from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He has a few closing remarks for us. Dulai has been one of the innovators of Faecal Sludge from the very beginning of the Faecal Sludge Management Conference. And also we would like to welcome you back for FSM3. So Dulai.
Thank you, Lina. I think from here we'll be transitioning to FSM4. And this conference has been a growing community of practice. And we're able to bring scientists, investors, government entities, representatives of utilities and municipalities together. You know, when we draw the map of, what's the best scenario to improve Faecal sludge management, these are exactly the boxes that we draw. So, which means we're getting the right stakeholders to really move forward with solutions. There were a few things mentioned about that. We're still missing some important stakeholders. Investors are not well represented. The industry is not well represented. There are few of them in this room. So we even managed to get one person from Senegal, I don't know whether he's in the room, Mr. Gay, who is a local, is a representative of a commercial bank in Senegal who is actually funding this sector. It is not obvious that you go out and manage other people's shit, right? For you to do that, you really have to love people. And I think this is what really unites us. We are here trying to solve this because we want to make this world, this 21st century, a better place for everyone to live. It's about removing disease. How do we do that? I think we bring in the right people to discuss that. Together, I'm really convinced, with the crowd that we have here, with the expertise we have here, if we remain open and bring those who can help us making progress, shaping solutions, it can take less than 10 years. I want to challenge the Brian time frame. So some countries are able to go faster when they can bring those expertise together. And I'm really counting that when we move forward for FSM4, this would be the time where we are coming forward with solutions which are shaped to make impact. We're not coming to discuss how we do stuff, but we're really coming together to achieve impact. So this is my few words for concluding this meeting. It has been a very exciting week to engage here. I would like everyone here to really applaud the people behind the scene. The organizing committee, a lot of them are present here. Some people did not come. And Linda, who is here, please give Linda and the organizing committee a very big applause. Thank you.